good Friday morning, everyone. And you know what I always do on Fridays? I must invite you to church. And for Saddleback, we meet in Clubhouse 5 at 9 and 11 a.m. We'll serve you a continental breakfast, including coffee and hard-boiled eggs and donuts. We'd love to have you worship with us. But if you have your own church, I praise God for that. Be sure and don't miss a chance of worshiping the Lord at your church, because that would be a shame. Do you recognize the cove behind me? Let me get out of the way here a little bit. I don't know if you do. If you've seen the Jesus Revolution movie, then you would probably recognize. This is the cove where Calvary Chapel back in the day, in the early 70s, was doing all their baptisms, and it's highlighted in that movie, The Jesus Revolution. So please go and see it. It is such a wonderful movie of praising God for what he has done through the whole Jesus Revolution, the Jesus people days. That's what I grew up in, and when I saw many people baptized in that very cove. So if you haven't seen that movie while it's still out, see it in the theaters, help support it. It did way better than the critics had thought it would, and that's wonderful because it means we'll get more movies that reflect the glory of God, just like it. Because Hollywood looks at and backs movies that make money. So I'm thrilled that it did so well. Wonderful movie. Hey, this week we have been discussing the first 5 of the apostles that are listed in Acts chapter 1 at verse 13. Now understand that there are actually 4 such lists of the 12. And they're found in Matthew 10, verse 3, Mark 3, verse 18, Luke 6, verse 14, and then that passage in Acts 1. And all of those lists are the same, except that some of them may have different names, slightly different names, and we've discussed those, and we come to another such situation today. And we're using the one in Acts 1, and we're working back from the last one listed because it says the last shall be first. So that's how we did it. And today, being Friday, we're at the 5th disciple or apostle. And his name, tricky name, Bartholomew. Bartholomew. And except in the Gospel of John, which is where we're going to read from this morning, he's called Nathanael. Why both? Why both? Well, Bartholomew is a Hebrew surname that means son of Ptolemy. So in 3 of the places, he's just called by that, son of Ptolemy. But Nathanael is is the same. So his given name was probably Nathanael Bartholomew. Nathanael Bartholomew. Nathanael, son of Ptolemy. But we're going to read, and that's why I wanted to mention, you can call him either way, because the Bible does, but he's the same guy. And we really read about him most in John chapter 1. And it's as he's getting called by Jesus. John chapter 1 at verse 43 says, the next day, Jesus decided to leave for Galilee. Finding Philip, he says to him, follow me. Verse 44, Philip, like Andrew and Peter, was from the town of Bethsaida. And then it says, Philip found Nathanael, or it could have said Bartholomew, but it says Nathanael, and told him, we have found the one that Moses wrote about in the law, and about whom the prophets also wrote, Jesus of Nazareth, son of Joseph. So just from that comment that Philip says to Nathanael, we can know that probably Nathanael, and Philip, were students of the law. When Philip says that to Nathanael, he has no doubt in his mind that indeed Nathanael is going to know what he's talking about. That all those messianic prophecies were going to be fulfilled in this one called Jesus, the son of Joseph. So that's good insight. But we're going to get more insight into this apostle. And he says, Nazareth, can any good thing come from Nazareth? Nathanael asked. Well, come and see, says Philip. In other words, he didn't think that Nazareth was a fitting place for the Messiah. But it was. And he's soon to see that. When Jesus saw Nathanael approaching, he said of him, here is a true Israelite, in whom there is nothing false. Other translations say, in whom is no guile. In other words, Jesus recognized him as a man who had a heart for God. And he wanted to live for him. Jesus knew Nathanael's heart, didn't he? You know what? Even that, it shows that Jesus knows our hearts. He knows everyone's heart. And that's how, he looks. Well, remember that verse? That man looks on the outside appearance, but God looks at your and my and Nathanael's heart. And Nathanael says, how do you know me? Nathanael asked, and Jesus answered, I saw you while you were still under the fig tree, before Philip called you. And then Nathanael declared, Rabbi, you are the Son of God. You are the King of Israel. Wow. You know how Nathanael knew that right away? Because he recognized that if Jesus saw him under the fig tree, Jesus wasn't there, but Jesus knew. And he says, I saw you. In other words, Jesus was demonstrating his omniscience, which means all-knowing, and his omnipresence, that he is everywhere. Attributes that only God himself would have. And Nathanael recognizes this, and his heart is touched. He's touched. He recognizes and immediately calls him, Jesus, you are the Son of God. And Jesus actually responds, the final verse, you believe because I told you I saw you under the fig tree. You shall see greater things than this. And he added, I tell you the truth. You shall see heaven open and the angels of God ascending and descending on the Son of Man. Jesus was affirming that, yes, Nathanael, I am the Son of God, and you're going to see even greater things than this, including angels descending. Nathanael stayed faithful to him for those 3 years following, and he saw the risen Lord in John 21 and the ascension in Acts 1. Tradition says that Bartholomew or Nathanael took the gospel to India. He died there, but the tradition has it that he was either put in a sack and dropped into the sea, or that he, like Jesus, was crucified for his faith. Either way, Nathanael or Bartholomew stayed faithful to Jesus throughout his whole life and died for his faith. Have a great weekend. I hope you join us to worship this Jesus this weekend. God bless, and I'll see you on Monday.
And I won't worry about tomorrow.